Welcome everybody. I have with me today Emily Auten, and there's a good reason for that. We've been going through this pandemic, and it's made a lot of changes happen in the world. We're going to get to all the changes and things that are taking place mentally for people, but first of all, I just want to ask you, I want to say one thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On your graduation.
Thank you.
And not only did you graduate recently, but you got a new job.
I did. Yes.
So that's always awesome. So tell me a little bit about your the last couple years and then your new position.
Okay, so I got my bachelor's in social work from USI, and I did two of my internships. I was at GLAD Adoption Agency with Julie Wells, and I loved that. And then my second internship was at Evansville Psychiatric Children's Center, which is kind of where I found out that I really wanted to work with kids in just that field. My graduate internship was at Luzio and Associates, so I got to work with adults and kids and kind of learn that I really do want to gear more towards kids.
Okay.
So like you said, I just got my my master's in social work.
That's awesome. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work, I would imagine.
Yes, I'm glad to be done.
Okay.
But I just accepted a position a month ago with Southwestern, so I'm working with kiddos there right now.
Okay. So you said you worked at an adoption agency.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing, or did you deal with a lot of people adopting children, or what was your position or role there?
It was just undergrad, so I was just kind of like learning the ropes, and it was basically just getting to see a lot of it was a Christian-based organization, so getting to see Christian families who are wanting to adopt kids locally from a lot of young moms. So it was super cool to get to see that, and a lot of them still kept the young moms in contact with the kids, so they still got to see them grow up. And,
That sounds awesome. All right, so you said you really understood and got it that you want to work with children. So as we mentioned, there's been a global pandemic going on, and nobody's in school. Have you, just tell me a little bit about maybe 6 months ago, is there any difference with dealing with children then versus now? Is there any changes happen?
Yeah, there's, just like in the adults, there's a lot of anxiety. A lot of these kids thrive on schedule and everything going the way that they have been used to it going, and their normal was completely thrown off. And I know as adults that's crazy to us, so think about it even more for kids that have no idea what's going on, and they see people in masks and they're kind of scared and they're not sure what's going on.
I get scared when I see people in masks. I'm like, are you holding me up or what's going on here?
And they don't, a lot of the younger kids don't understand why they can't get out and they can't go play with their friends. And so like they're just upset. A lot of the older teenagers are angry, coming out as defiant because they're not sure why the governor is making these rules and why do they need to follow them, because they are confused. But yeah, and a lot of sleep schedules are messed up. We've actually seen that a lot, and it's actually leading to a lot of mental health problems because they're only getting a few hours of sleep, or they're staying up until 5 or 6 a.m. because their schedule is just thrown off.
Playing video games all night long and sleep all day long,
and I mean that can lead to a lot of health problems, physical and mental. So but mostly just anxiety and not knowing what's going on.
So with anxiety, what is a way to work with somebody and treat them and help somebody? If you're watching this and you have either a child or a grandchild or somebody going through something like that, what's a way to help that?
So when a kiddo comes in for anxiety, what the goal is to give them coping skills. Like we're obviously everybody is going to experience some anxiety in their life, and it's never going to completely go away. You'll have things where it comes back up. And so giving them those coping skills like breathing, or if they enjoy running or walking, and a lot of times even writing down what their coping skills are, so the parents can pull out that paper and be like, oh, well, we know that you enjoy reading a book when you get anxious. And so like spending that time with your kids and doing the coping skill with them really helps them calm down. So giving them the skills when that anxiety pops back up to kind of deal with it and move forward.
It's kind of a strategy. When you see this happen, this is how to react to it.
They can realize their triggers. Like when my hands start shaking or when I get a little headache, I know that something's coming on, and each kid's trigger is different. And so recognizing in your kids what their triggers are is extremely important, and coming up with different skills. Because each kid is different, and it'll take a different skill for each kid.
And I imagine even with all the anxiety and things going on with kids, I'm sure there's a lot of adults that are like, I was not meant to be a teacher. I was not meant to, I want to go to work and I want to go on my schedule, and now I'm at home 24/7. I guess probably similar anxiety and stuff, but what have you seen that way?
Yeah, we've had a lot of parents just kind of not knowing like what activities to give their kids, and a lot of parents have kids from babies to teenagers, and so trying to find something that they can all do together as a family, but still giving attention to each individual child. And so we focus a lot with the parents on giving their kids like choices, like these are your 3 choices, and so you're giving it to the kid and presenting to them, so it's their option. They can make the decision, but ultimately you're giving them 3 options. And so to the little kids, that comes across to, ooh, I get to pick what I get to do today. And so that's a big thing that we teach the parents, is giving them choices and laying them out so that they can make the decision.
So they're not always just being told what to do. That's good. That's good. So with all these just mental stresses going on, and they're real, they're legitimate, they can make an impact in somebody's life and how they respond to things. Just as, you know, we're believers, we're Christians, knowing all of these things are taking place, the real answer to all of this is Jesus. So have you, I know you work with 180 and seeing the kids over there and ministering to them, not only trying to help meet their mental or physical needs, but also how to build them up spiritually. Have you had any, maybe give a success story or just something where you've been able to meet with somebody and help them understand who they really are, who their true identity is in Christ?
We had a young girl who was just struggling with a loss in her life, and that can be confusing to adults as well.
Oh, yes.
And then the whole idea of not knowing where your family is going after they're gone. And so just reassuring them who they are and just praying over them and their family, and just making them feel like, you know, God is with them and He is for them, no matter what circumstances come their way. So
yeah, you know, just when you said that, it's Paul said that we're not like those who have no hope, because we have a hope in Jesus. And I think a lot of people out there, even in this situation that's going on, a lot of people are realizing they don't have any hope. They're confused, they're angry.
And that's scary.
It is scary, and it leads people to a couple different, they either lash out or they become more introverted, or they get curious and like, well, what is out there? And I think it's a great time for the church to be there to help people through these times, to meet, you know, it says in James, like if somebody's hungry, give them some food and then let them know about the gospel. So I think this is a great opportunity with people that are having problems. So if you're out there and you're saying, man, I'm watching this and everything she said I'm experiencing, there is hope for you. And that hope is in Jesus, because the realization is that whenever you receive Jesus, you are a new person. The old is gone and the new has come. And I think that's really at in a different level. That's what you're trying to do with them on a mental level. Is for them to understand this is how you were behaving. This is how you should be behaving. So any other experiences that you've had that you think?
No, I was just off of that. I mean, obviously we know that Jesus is the answer, and I think there is this stigma attached to Christians that if you believe in God, you don't need to go get therapy.
Yes.
But I strongly believe that God has placed this call in my life to be a therapist, and even when these kiddos are coming in, I don't necessarily have to say Jesus loves you, but I am the hands and feet of Jesus, and I am there for them, and I'm giving them Jesus without necessarily saying it. And so I think that it's extremely important to know that I'm not the only one that's been called to therapy. There's thousands of other therapists who have Jesus in their heart, and they're giving it to these kids. And so I just think that stigma that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you get extra help. I mean, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And if you had a friend who had cancer, had a different, you would, you know, bake them food, you would call them, you would check on them, and you would help them get to the doctor, and you would pray for them. And I think it's the same thing for mental health. If someone is feeling depressed, you should check on them, and you should pray for them. They need Jesus and that support.
That's a great point, because I think there is that stigma that, well, if you're a Christian, just pray and get over it. What's wrong? Why are you depressed? Now, I do believe that if you understand the love of God and how much He loves you, and you have a true revelation, it's impossible to be depressed, because if God of the universe loves you, then who cares about anything else? But the realization is we all go through cycles and times in our life where for whatever reason, we get to a point where you feel worn down. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, it was like everything I could do just to get out of bed and go to work because I didn't like the place I was working. I felt just not used properly and just all these things. And I mean, it was tough, and it took a period of time, but, for however I dealt with it or whatever, I prayed and it was actually a time when I was preaching more here, which I think is always funny, that these mental attacks and things happen when you start elevating spiritually. But I mean, it took a while for me to get over that to a certain extent. And probably if I would have talked to somebody through all this, it probably would have been faster. So if you're out there watching this and you're like, man, I've never considered that because I don't want people to think I'm like mentally losing it or whatever, or I'm a Christian, I shouldn't be doing that. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. It's actually beneficial. Because if you can get the mental part off it, you might be able to get that cleared away so that your spirit can really start speaking to you and you can understand more clearly.
Yeah, and I mean, a testimony is so powerful. And so what you overcome, you can help someone else overcome. And so I think not hiding those issues that you're facing and sharing those with others can make a world of difference in someone's life.
Yeah, because the enemy always wants you to think you're alone. And I don't know if you can bear witness to this or not, but when you talk to people, do they always feel isolated or alone?
Yeah, it's always, I'm the only one. It's just because there's that stigma that you can't talk about mental health because it's just not something people talk about.
Right.
And so then every single person feels like they're the only one depressed, they're the only one with anxiety, and in fact, it's everyone around you.
Right. Everybody's dealing with it, and I think it's like either no one talks about it, or there's a few people that always talk about it. Like, oh my God, I'm so anxious today, and they're always talking about it, but it's the boy that cried wolf when they're always talking, then you don't really give any credibility to it, even though they really might be dealing with something, but they, it's just understanding what they're saying.
Yeah, and I think there's an educational piece to that because there's a difference between having depression and feeling depressed.
Yes.
I mean, chronic depression is like weeks and months, it could be years, and depression, like you could just have it a couple days, or like it's once in a lifetime. Like maybe you've only felt depressed once in your life, and there's a big difference in that. Or chronic anxieties, you can't go to sleep. Every day you're thinking about something, or, oh, I just have test anxiety. Like there's a little bit of a difference in knowing the educational piece of what is what.
Right.
Yeah.
So have you seen or talked to children or even adults that are saying, I'm really experiencing more depression or anxiety that's leading me to think of suicide or ending everything or whatever? Have you seen an escalation that over the last year?
There definitely is, and I think a lot of it is parents don't want to feel like they don't want their kids to have a mental illness, or they don't want their kids to be depressed. So many, which is so sad because so many times these parents are just pushing aside these kids' problems, and it builds up and it builds up, and then they attempt suicide, and then the parents are kind of like, oh my gosh, this is real, this just happened. Yeah.
And then they say like, why didn't you tell me?
And they did in so many ways, but the parents didn't want like so-and-so to know this is going on, or they're a pastor at church, my kid can't be depressed. I'm not, and it just builds up.
Yeah. It's funny because I hate to say it's funny, but I was talking to somebody at work, and I mentioned something about how my daughter Emily can sleep all day or whatever, and she's, at that point she was 17, she was doing all kinds of stuff with school and everything, so any chance she had, she would sleep, and I wouldn't blame her. I mean, I would probably sleep too, but instantly the person's like, oh, she's depressed. And I remember I was like, no, she's not. Like, what do you don't know what you're talking. You're not qualified to diagnose anything. You sell jewelry. So
that's another educational piece. If I'm like that too. I sleep all the time. I can nap anytime, but I'm not depressed. I mean, for like kids who aren't normally like that, and then all of a sudden they're only sleeping. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't have no motivation. They don't want to play their sports anymore. Right. That's when it starts to kick in. It's not if they've always been a tired person.
That's like an identifier. Yeah, that's I could sleep.
You can just be tired.
Oh, that's yeah, you can just fall asleep at any time. Like you said, it's recognizing those triggers or recognizing difference in pattern. Yeah. If somebody just changes their whole life all of a sudden. Yeah. That's a huge indicator. So with that, how would you, let's say a parent sees during this whole thing, this at home they can't go see their friends, they can't do all these things. If they see all of a sudden now they're sleeping 20 hours a day versus before when they were sleeping 4 hours, what would you recommend for them?
Yeah, I think definitely the first step is just to check on them. Like, hey, I noticed you've been sleeping a lot. Like, is it just because it's summer now and you just, like, you know, don't have anything to do? Or, like, tell me how you're feeling. And I think there's such an emphasis and importance on parents having a relationship with their children and knowing their children and creating that safe place where their kids can come to them if they are feeling suicidal or they're just feeling a little sad that day.
Right.
Because like I said, if you shut that off and it's a no feeling zone, they don't feel like they can talk to anybody.
Right. And that's when you say a no feeling zone, because as Christians, a lot of times you hear that we're not moved by our feelings, we're moved by faith. You know, we don't go by what we see, we go by what we believe, and that's all true. But it's not to the detriment of ignoring someone's emotional state or feelings. It's addressing where they're at, helping them through that so that they can then therefore see beyond that.
Yeah.
They can have a hope for the future, because a lot of times people in these situations probably have no hope. They don't see a positive end. So they just go down that negative trail.
Yeah. So I think after you've had that conversation with them, and if they are open and honest, it may be something that you yourself can just kind of fix and work on, but don't feel ashamed as parents if you have to reach out to a mental health clinic or a therapist to get help. And sometimes it's even beneficial just for the parents to learn coping skills, and then it only takes a few sessions and they can go and do that on their own.
Right.
But I just, like I said, I don't feel shame in reaching out for help, because as Christians, we're built on community and coming together. You're not supposed to do life alone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, you know, Jesus took on all our shame. So there's no reason to feel shame or guilt. And it's not an admission that you failed as a parent.
Right.
I think a lot of parents think, oh my gosh, I've failed, so I don't want people to see that. So there's no guilt, there's no condemnation, there's no shame. Just deal with the problem so that you can move on, and so it can help the child or help you move on to the place that God really wants you to be. All right, so as a therapist, if someone's watching this video and they're on the border, they're on the bubble thinking, I should really talk to someone, but I still have the stigma or still have all these things going on, what's one thing you would like to say to that person to kind of help push them over the edge to come see or talk to a therapist to get help?
I would definitely say, like we've been talking about, you are not alone, and including myself, everyone has dealt with a mental health issue. Like I said, your physical health is just as important as your mental health. And you have to have your cup filled before you're filling others' cups. And so I think it's important to know the people around you, know your family, have these conversations after you watch this video with your kids, with your spouse, like just check in, like, hey, I know life's crazy right now. How are you doing? And you'd be surprised how many people don't have those conversations. So I would just encourage you to just be connected with those around you, especially your family in your circle. And just don't be afraid to reach out and get the help that you need.
And so when you talk about being connected, you know, a great way to be connected is, you know, have an organization or church that you visit and that you go to. So when you see people who come from churches, and is that something that they can get involved in? Is getting involved in a church or an organization where they can give and they can be part of it, is that something you see that's helpful?
Yeah, actually, most therapists, whether they're Christian or not, one of the things we do with our kiddos is ask if they're engaged in church and try to get them connected into youth groups, which is totally crazy to think that even people who don't believe in Jesus are recommending church.
Well, so you're saying even non-Christian therapists are suggesting church?
Yes, and it's because of the community. They're feeding kids, they're playing games with kids, they're connecting with kids, they're giving them that family.
They're showing them that they love them, that they're cared about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so awesome to have something to believe in. And even therapists who, because I know therapists who don't believe in God, but they know that giving these kids a hope and a future is incredible. And that's all that these kids need. And so, most therapists do recommend church.
That's awesome. That's great. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up with that, because that's a great ending, is if getting involved in a church is a great way to help just battle the mental fatigue, mental challenges that you have, because you develop relationships with people that can help you, that keep you stable, that can help just kind of help you walk your path.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much,
you're
Emily.
welcome.
This was fun. It was a good time. And, you know, if you need something, if you need prayer, or you say, I want more information, text 812-432-2662 and just text the word pray, and someone will contact you and you can talk to them about that. And if you need a reference or somebody to go talk to, let us know. We'll get that information to you because we are here for you. We love you, we care about you, and we want God's best for you. Any final words?
My final words would just be to be safe and to just, like I said, check in with your family and just love on those around you.
Amen. There you go. God bless you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.